From Chicago's CAN TV, a look at the week's events is reported in the newspapers, in the blogs and online, and on radio and TV. This is Chicago Newsroom.
And hi again. Welcome to another edition of Chicago Newsroom. I'm Ken Davis. We have a list of things to talk about today that is, well, it's impossible. We can't do it. There's so much going on. But I thought, well, first of all, let me introduce some of our guests, all of our guests. Why don't we introduce all of them? Chris Robling is with us today, WGN-TV analyst and a prominent Republican opinionator in town. We also have Delmarie Cobb with us. Delmarie is also well known around town as a political strategist and a former media person of her own, and just a great person to help us put things in perspective. And from Vocalo.org, we have Achy Obejas with us today for the first time on the program. Achy, thank you very much for coming with us and
thanks for inviting me.
Talking about a lot of things. Thought we'd start off today with a little present for each and every one of you. I stopped at the convenience store down the way this morning and picked up a couple of lotto tickets for you, so each of you has one. Fantastic. Because the big news this morning anyway, it may not be the biggest news, but the big news that broke this morning is that we're going to have more casinos in town than they have on the Las Vegas Strip if the Illinois legislature has its way. Massive increases, 4 more river boats, 2 of them in Chicago, 2 in the Chicago area, Park City, south suburbs. A land-based casino in Chicago. Again, this is only the Senate. The House hasn't voted on this, but you know, is this going to happen?
I hope not.
Right.
Hoping is one thing.
Yeah. No, I think it's an utter lack of imagination and frankly quite irresponsible to think about casinos, especially in the city of Chicago. We have problems with budget. That presumably is why we're going to be doing this. But the problems that this will bring are just astounding to me. Well, and that no one seems to be doing this.
It really
strikes
does.
me as
it just strikes me that we have these massive holes in the budget to fill, and we're trying to fill them with like poor people giving their earnings away and hapless people who drive through red lights. I mean, you know, catching people.
And that's exactly what it is. I mean, the role of government is to take care of its people. And when you exacerbate pathologies, that is not taking care of your people. And in a time that the economic times that we're in, when people really need to hold on to every penny, yet when you're poor, you're thinking about, if I just get that one big hit, everything will be okay. And so you're asking people, in many cases, not to take their paycheck home. And so that's only going to exacerbate the problems they already have if they lose everything at the casino or the video gaming that's at the bar next door before they even get home.
And we're also seeing the expansion of these, you know, this new term, racinos, where racetracks are going to become betting parlors with one-armed bandits and God knows what else.
I think it shows unfortunately, it's the result of the election. And it is a situation in which the Republicans were not able to mount a serious enough challenge at the gubernatorial level or at the legislative level. And so you have Democrats in place who are stymied by one of their own from raising taxes, which I think as a Republican is a good thing for everybody, for the state and for everybody. But they're captive. They're captive of their spending interests. And I doubt my views are shared, but my view of it is that when you cannot say no to the spenders in government, then you just look at ways to increase revenue, whatever they may be. I agree with Delmarie that this is crossing a line into promoting pathologies, and this is balancing a budget on the backs of those least able to afford it.
Absolutely.
And that's the way government, I mean, that seems to be the trend in government, is to keep going back to the same people, the people who can afford it the least, and asking for money, a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time. And I don't understand where government thinks the people are getting the money, because everybody's on a fixed income. If you have a salary, you're on a fixed income, because you cannot keep going back to your boss every time somebody goes up on you and say, you know what, the cab fare just went up. You know what,
I need you to go up 1%.
Yeah, the garbage just went up.
Right.
You know, and so where does government think we're getting the money? And so there's absolutely, as Achy said, there's absolutely no creativity at all in terms of coming up with ways. And that's something that we're not talking about, because we should demand that our leaders look very carefully at alternative sources of revenue. And
look at all those bloated bureaucracies. I mean, all of these. No, actually, I'm becoming more Republican about this.
This is great.
After so many years, I'm not a Republican, just for the record. But when I look,
play one on TV.
Yes. No, when I actually do look at just how government keeps growing and growing and growing and growing. It's not that I don't think that government has a role. I think government has a very strong role, and it's about taking care of its people, and it's about, policing bad people from doing terrible things. And I'm not just talking about, crime. I'm talking about, food safety. I'm talking about housing safety. I'm talking about all those things that government needs to do. I'm talking about standards. But when I look at some of these bureaucracies and how much money, crazy money, is being spent on, salaries, on benefits, on all this madness, pensions,
well,
and that's another madness.
This is a very interesting.
I don't get it. I don't get why the first stop is, as you say, the poorest people, the lowest people, and the lowest rung of the ladder. Except obviously that by virtue of being the lowest rung on the ladder, they're also the powerless, the most powerless, and thus they have no voice, no one represents them. It would require an actual act of selflessness. It would require an actual ethical position for someone to say, not these people. Let's look at someplace else. Let's see what else we can do.
I know that Richard Roper speaks glowingly about his travels to go gambling in Las Vegas and stuff, but other than him, you rarely hear about people who are wealthy and in the powered classes hanging out at casinos. You see buses full of people who really shouldn't be on those buses showing up to put their quarters in the machine.
Las Vegas, great fun.
Yes.
No question about it. But if you really want to look at gambling, just go over to Michigan City, Indiana, where I grew up.
Las Vegas. Right,
and just sit in that riverboat. It didn't exist when I was growing up there. When it actually came about, I was sort of fascinated about the idea of there being a gambling palace in my little tiny, Smallville. It is an incredibly depressing place. It's older folks on Social Security. It's people spending their pensions. I mean, you don't see big glowing smiles. You're not talking about bachelorette parties and corporate affairs.
And it's one of the reasons why the wealthy communities opted out of the video gaming, because they understand what's at stake, that the social issues will outweigh whatever revenues that they get from the gambling.
I don't gamble, okay, and I've been to Las Vegas and
I take
$20 and I lose it in 2 minutes, and then I walk
give myself
back.
a limit.
I go to the gift shop and get a T-shirt, but do we want an Illinois that is so dependent on these activities? I mean, is that the vision? Is that the best vision that the state Senate can come up with? Well, do they have they no idea of growing the natural economy? We have not created a net new job in Illinois since 1997. That's not me, that's the University of Illinois talking. And we let jobs go begging in this state, good manufacturing, high-paying jobs. Caterpillar is expanding because of all the construction around the world. They cannot find enough people to take those jobs. Our people, because of our community colleges, because of our high schools, because of our public education system, our people are not qualified to take the good manufacturing jobs that we have. We lose manufacturers in Illinois because they're going to places with better educated people.
And that's part of the problem as well, is that one of the things I said, I think before, about being a world-class city is that you have to have a world-class workforce, and that means a world-class education system. That's the same goes for statewide. But what is happening is we're allowing our leaders And here in the city of Chicago, I think it's just is even more prevalent, because you talk about the number of jobs lost statewide, the number of jobs that are lost in the city, in the downtown area. I mean, we're filling up these office buildings with students because we can't fill them up with workers. And so,
you mean the colleges that are expanding?
Right, that are expanding into the office buildings. I mean, every time you look, another office building is becoming a dormitory. And
but those schools, which are the Art Institute and Columbia College, are also expanding incredibly because they've been very successful at what they do. Those are both private schools that have made a point of developing particular programs. In fact, Columbia now has the #1 film school in the country.
I'm not saying that they don't have a place. I'm saying that, one, if I am correct, schools don't pay taxes for the buildings that they have.
You're right
That's
about that.
the first thing. Right. And the second thing is, those are empty buildings where workers once were. And so, and those students, in all likelihood, when they get their education, will probably leave the city of Chicago. So we are not nurturing them and growing them to stay here. So the problem is that we're not generating the jobs that we need to generate, and we're doing things to get rid of money because we have a leader, a mayor. We've had a mayor who does anything he wants to do, and there's absolutely no repercussion whatsoever, and no one talking about it, because we want to talk around it. Everybody wants to talk around it instead of talking about the issues.
You wanted a conversation, and now you're getting it. I mean, the fact is, our life as a community has been constrained as much as it's been upheld by the Daley administration. And I mean, if the Daley administration had all of these years to fix the public schools, what do they have to show for that?
Very little. They have a two-tier system.
If we have all of these years, right, we already have school choice. The rich people go to the suburbs, or the rich people send their kids to
private schools.
The private schools, or the influential sort of public magnet schools. They get in one way or another. That's not helping the average. We now have kids who are graduating from 8th grade in whose lives we've never had a net new job in this state. Are they going to stay here? Or are they going to end up out-migrating like so many others?
Don't forget that we actually only graduate half of the kids who go through the Chicago public schools.
It's a real...
So you're also looking at a workforce that is dramatically undereducated.
Right.
One of the things that I'm always sort of fascinated by is this idea of creating jobs for Chicago. And we're always talking about tech jobs, and we're always talking about jobs that require a certain level of education. And I'm thinking, great, but that's still not... We're not talking about jobs for the people who are living in Chicago.
Well, this is a real pet peeve of mine, and we'll have to reserve this one for another discussion. But we are shoveling people into universities and charging their parents $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year for education for something for which training for which we really don't need. So, and then in the meantime, the real jobs, the people who make things, those people aren't being trained. But let's. No,
I think all jobs are real jobs. I don't think manufacturing is the only thing that's a real job, and I do think tech jobs are jobs, and I do think service jobs are jobs. And
but we're training people for jobs that don't exist. Is the
well,
thing
I don't know how much we're training people. This is the thing that, as someone who actually teaches, you know, and has taught at many different universities in the city, from very private, super elite University of Chicago to, very working class University of Illinois, I can honestly tell you that people who are going to school needs, graduating from the CPS, even the super elite kids, frequently are so deficient in basic stuff. I mean, I cannot tell you how many kids I have in writing classes who cannot write a sentence.
Okay, I want to move us on, because we just want to try to get a few more topics in here today. One of the things that's been really interesting to me is that the sleepy little folks down in the Illinois legislature, the ones we almost never hear from, all of a sudden in the last few days have just exploded on the scene with pension reform, this thing we've just been talking about, gambling, and of course civil unions passed this week. You've written about it, Achy. 61 to 52 in the House, 32 to 24 in the Senate. This is a sea change. This is a change of zeitgeist, isn't it, in Illinois?
Is it? Is it a sea change?
Well, it seems that way to me, but I don't know.
I I don't know. I think that...
I mean, it is in the sense that you couldn't have done that a year ago, could you? 2 years ago, if you had taken that vote, you wouldn't have got those kind of votes, would you?
Well, I don't know that you wouldn't have. I'm not entirely sure that that's true. The fact is that civil unions have been sold as this sort of palatable, practical approach to appease, these people who want it. And polls in Illinois have shown consistent support for years on civil unions. This is not a big surprise. It's not like, out of nowhere there's been this tremendous sentiment that, that came just bang. In fact, the people
well, we're
of
almost late to the party.
We're always late to the party.
Yes.
And what we have passed is a very, very pale law in terms of equality. It is absolutely separate but equal, and equal like this. It is a law that basically says, we acknowledge that you two have some kind of relationship. We don't want to talk about what it is, and as a result, we're going to save you the attorney's fees of having to go do a power of attorney in order to be able to inherit, make hospital visitation visits, and make medical decisions about your partner.
Right.
That's basically what has happened. It is not same-sex marriage. It is not big and radical. Most Illinois corporations that are of any size already have some form of domestic partner benefits and things like that. That actually include some of these rights.
Well, I'm sorry I brought it up.
No, I think it's pockets. No, I mean, you've seen it in pockets of communities where they're just absolutely against it. I mean, it's certainly in the Black community, it comes up all the time. If I don't
think it comes up in the Black community. I think it comes up in the Black religious community.
Right, no, but it does, because as a talk show host on WVON, when I was on VON, if you wanted to stir the pot, all you had to do was bring anything up about homosexuality that if they had the hint of homosexuality, I mean, the phones rang off the hook. I mean, it was just unbelievable to me. I mean, and you would hear the same argument over and over and over. It absolutely made no sense.
That old talk show thing when you want to get the phones to ring.
Right, exactly.
What about abortion? Is that right?
but that was the one push button issue that came up all the time. So it is in the Black community, and I mean, and only because, I mean, I agree with you that it's probably more instigated by the religious community.
I just think it happens the same way in the white community. If when you listen to talk radio on with white hosts that are if you those guys who are on the right who have a religious bent, that's also their go-to issue. I don't think it's a racial. I don't think that the Black community.
It's not the hosts. It's the people who are calling. Because I can tell you, as the host, I didn't have a bent one way or the other.
I just don't know that I necessally buy that communities of color, because I know the same thing is frequently said about.
No, but I can tell you as communities of color and specifically the Black community. I can't talk about the other communities of color.
No, I bow to your expertise.
But one of the reasons I can say that is when I was a talk show host on VON. At the time, the very issue that was trying to get passed was the Human Rights Bill in the City Council.
Right.
And I can tell you that of all of those 10 issues that were part of that civil human rights bill, 9 of them affected African Americans. It was the African American community that was against it, because they didn't understand that 9 of them affected us. And in terms of not being rejected from a house by a landlord because you have a big family, or you're on welfare, or you're this or you're that. And it was because of that one issue, homosexuality, that the Black community was against it.
Well, I'm just gonna jump in here real quick, because I was part of the activist sort of group that helped pass that law. And I'm gonna say, first of all, 10 issues affected the Black community, because there are Black gays and lesbians.
I understand that.
Okay, and the other thing is that when you go back and you look at that vote in 1988, it would not have passed without the votes of the Black aldermen, and without tremendous support from huge Black organizations like Operation Push and Willie Barrow and a lot of those people.
I understand
this is, I think, again, you have to look at these things in a kind of a broader way. I understand what you're saying.
And I can just tell you that since I was already a political consultant too.
It's kind of a complicated
But I can
issue.
just tell you, as a political consultant, some of those clients who voted for it, I had deep and long conversations with them to get them to vote for it.
Believe me, I had the same conversation with Latino aldermen. It was a nightmare. Now there's a big guy.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to point out that I've been on a number of panels with this gentleman, Chris Robling. As a matter of fact, just last night, it was said of him at a panel on the future of architecture in Chicago.
That he wouldn't
it was said of Chris Robling, this guy, if he wasn't a Republican, could be mayor of Chicago. That's how much Chris Robling likes to participate in conversations. He can't get a word in edgewise on this program today.
I'm fascinated. I'm having a great time. I'm going to have to. Ken's going to sell me a ticket for this. 2 quick points. A, this was recompense after the election, and let's understand that the winners are saying thank you to their supporters, and that happens after most elections.
Right.
And number 2, it's incrementalism. I mean, I don't disagree that the bill is a pale, pale shadow of what's passed elsewhere. I think that the supporters of the bill understand this can be passed now, other things can happen later.
Absolutely, I agree with you on that. It's just important to really understand what the bill is. I mean, you know, Greg Harris, the legislator who passed it, was telling me the other day, and I had it in the column I wrote about it. You know, look, when you look at all movements of struggle, it's always done in steps. This is just a step. It's not the first step, it's not the second, it's not the last. It's just a step. And I agree with that.
Okay,
I just don't want people to get confused about this being same-sex marriage.
Excuse me, Chris, you were once a member of the Board of Elections. You were commissioner of the Board of Elections in the city of Chicago.
Guilty.
So you know a little bit, you know a little something about this.
Just a little bit.
What the heck is going on with all of the petition challenges that are coming in? And specifically, do you think that we have anything to actually be concerned about vis-a-vis Rahm Emanuel? I mean, is this serious, this thing with the residency? When this comes up, when the residency issue actually comes before whoever it comes before, is there a danger that Rahm Emanuel will get taken off the ballot?
Well, I don't consider that a danger.
To him, it would be a danger to him.
Let me start with the question about petition challenges. You know, in my mind, the answer to almost every public policy issue is involvement. And so anytime people get involved, wherever they're getting involved, and on whatever side, and in whatever mechanism, whether it's a petition challenge or circulating petitions, or going out for their favorite candidate and handing out yard signs or flyers at the train station, I'm for all of that. And everyone whose petitions have been submitted should anticipate a very close review by their political adversaries and by other voters, because the people of the state of Illinois, through the General Assembly, have established means by which you get on the ballot. Now, the ballot access question is another philosophical question, and we can talk about that some other time. But these are the laws on the books, and they've got to be adhered to, and the mechanism that's created by the General Assembly for that adherence is an adversarial challenge process. When you get to the question of residency, I think that, and I'm really out of the process, I have nothing, you know, I'm just watching. I think if you read the plain language of the statute, Rahm has a real problem getting on the ballot. I don't think that Rahm is anywhere close to getting on the ballot if you if the plain language of the statute, and as I understand it, some of the progeny in the decisions since then are applied. Now, that doesn't always happen. When I was commissioner, I voted against Tom Lyons. Okay, I actually voted against Tom Lyons because he was living in Glencoe and saying that he lived in the 45th Ward. And I said, no, he lives.
It's a little different, Chris.
No, it's not.
How?
No, it's not.
I'm not following
He was
this.
living in.
I'm just not
He was
following
living in Washington. His family was in Washington. His kids were going to Washington. He had rented his house, and he was not.
But if someone who had been in the military for 2 years,
there's an exemption for the military.
But that's not
But serving the president of the United States as his chief of staff, that's not exempt.
Ken, I'll hand you a ticket to Springfield on Amtrak, and you can get down there and talk to your state senator, state representative, change the law. I'm just saying, as the law is currently written, it doesn't say or service in the administration of the time or something like that. So I think Rahm has a problem. I'm not saying how it's going to turn out, but this is a serious issue.
And the other part of that is the intent was, the reason I'm renting my house out is because the market turned down and I cannot sell it. I had it on the market to sell. The compromise is renting it, which is why I just extended the lease September 1st, and the mayor announced September 7th. I mean, so there is when we talk about intent.
Under the rubric, never miss an opportunity to keep your mouth shut. Okay? and Rahm says never miss an opportunity to use a crisis to create a new government bureaucracy. But I mean, this also comes back at him in this case.
We're going to jump around now because we're really crunching on time. Roland Burris. You know a little something about Roland. You've worked with him in the past. Where did the petitions come from for Roland Burris, and is he a serious candidate? Do you have any insight on this?
I don't have a whole lot of insight on this because I'm not working with him on it. But I mean, I do know that there was a group of people who felt that he had not been treated very well in terms of the Senate race, and with the court deciding that he could not even be a part of the special election. And so when this opportunity came up, they wanted to circulate his petitions to see if they could get enough signatures. I understand that it was pulled together very quickly. The last 2 weeks in November. I mean, the last 2 weeks before they were supposed to turn in petitions, and they got 20,000 signatures for him. And of course, he signed the declaration of candidacy because he did not want to tell the people who had come to him no, but I don't know that he is going to mount a serious campaign.
All right, so there's no evidence that he's ready to like spring forward with a big campaign.
I don't know that he's going to mount a serious campaign. I mean, I think certainly he has the qualifications of somebody who could run for mayor. Whether he will run for mayor at this seriously at this point in his life, I don't know that that's the case.
He loses nothing by hanging around to see what happens with the petition challenges. Sorry.
Right.
No, I just
and I believe
Chris, our floor director, just showed me the 2-minute sign, and
I do believe someone challenged his petitions.
Okay. Greg Hines wrote a piece the other day in Cranes about Miguel Del Valle, that he could have the spirit of Harold Washington. It's sort of like lit a little bit of a fire under Miguel Del Valle. Is there anything to that?
Well, I believe Miguel is the only progressive in this race. I mean, that's the way I view him. And given his history in terms of the African American community and the Hispanic community, I mean, he should be. The progressives in this city who claim that they really want a progressive candidate should be behind him, black and white.
I'll say this much for Miguel. He's run a surprising, stunning campaign so far. It is so good.
What stuns you?
It's so organized. They're everywhere. They had the first commercial out. They have websites that actually work. The Facebook page is totally engaged. You go and see the volunteer meetings, and there are a gazillion people there. He actually has done an amazing job as clerk. I mean, I think, is he a viable candidate? I mean, for progressive, absolutely. But I think if you look at what he's done as clerk, everyone should be impressed.
Except for Stickergate. But he handled that even well.
He handled that well. This speaks to the real nature of an open election, and unfortunately now a nonpartisan, but I think that's going to show some benefits. The way these candidates treat each other and the way they treat each other's constituencies will be determinative of the ultimate outcome because of the coming together after the primary.
And that is going to have to be the last word in probably the fastest moving show we've ever done here. We got almost halfway through, so that's not too bad. Chris Robling, thank you very much for being with us today from WGN and lots of other things, Republican analyst. Delmarie Cobb here with us today, also a very prominent person in Democratic politics and other things in Chicago. And Achy Obejas with us from Vocalo.org, a blogger and also commentator, as you heard, on all sorts of things. You've been watching Chicago Newsroom. It's a community service of CAN TV, and of course you can watch us right here, 6:30 on Thursdays, but you can catch us all over the internet. Just check it out on iTunes and other places, okay? Thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you next time here on Chicago Newsroom.